The first part of the manhwa begins in 10 years ago, when a mysterious gate appeared in various parts of the world, connecting the human world to a realm of magic and monsters known as the dungeon. Upon the emergence of the gate, certain humans were gifted with special powers, known as awakenings. These chosen individuals became known as hunters, each with their own unique skills and specializations, ranging from attackers to defenders and beyond. Hunters are ranked based on their strength, with the weakest receiving an E rank and the strongest among them even becoming known as country-class hunters. Similarly, monsters in the dungeon itself are ranked on a scale from E to S, with E being the weakest and S the strongest. As the gate opened, a struggle for dominance between humans and monsters began, with hunters serving as the front line of defense against the creatures that emerged from the dungeon. The fate of the world rests on their shoulders as they fight to protect humanity from the threats that lurk beyond the dimensional gate. The Hunters Guild operates a system where they assess the difficulty of each dungeon gate before sending in a team of hunters to tackle it. If the gate is rated as a level E, then they will only send in hunters of the same class or higher. This is because the dangers within the dungeon are unpredictable, and they want to ensure the safety of their team. Upon successfully completing a gate, hunters are generously rewarded with cash. This is because the materials and treasures that can be obtained from the monsters within the dungeon are extremely valuable. The bodies of defeated monsters can be used to craft powerful weapons and other useful items, which can then be sold for a high price. It's no wonder that many people are drawn to the profession of hunting. Ji-woo, a teenage male hunter from rank E, has earned the unfortunate nickname of the weakest hunter. Despite his lack of strength, he is often invited to join hunting parties, or raids, because the guild rules dictate that a minimum of 10 hunters must be present for each gate. Ji-woo is in a difficult situation, as he must support his sister and pay for his mother's hospital fees. His mother has been bedridden with illness for years, and Ji-woo has no other choice but to turn to hunting to make ends meet. The risk of severe death was a hunter's worst nightmare, and Ji-woo knew he had to do everything in his power to avoid it. So when a level D gate appeared in the construction area, Ji-woo didn't hesitate to join the raid. As he entered the dungeon, he met a healer-type hunter named Lee Joo-hee, who seemed to be familiar with Ji-woo as they had raided together before. The raid was led by a magic-type hunter named Mr. Song, and there were a total of 17 hunters in the group. They easily defeated the monsters in the dungeon and stumbled upon another gate, which was a rare occurrence as it was unusual to find more than one dungeon. The hunters drew lots to decide who would go through the second gate, with 8 people choosing to enter and the other 8 choosing to return. Ji-woo was faced with a difficult decision. He desperately needed the money from the raid to pay for his mother's hospital bills, but he also knew the risks of continuing on. In the end, Ji-woo made the decision to continue the raid with the rest of the group, and all 17 of them entered the second dungeon. As they explored the dungeon, they came across a mysterious gate that opened easily. They found themselves in a room that was more accurately called a shrine, surrounded by giant statues. The biggest statue sat on a throne and was referred to as the statue of the king. In one corner of the room, they saw a statue holding a stone. Mr. Song knew the script and read out the command. First, worship your majesty. Second, praise your majesty. Thirdly, prove your loyalty. Those who didn't follow orders would never come back alive. As soon as Mr. Song finished reading the command, the eye of the king's statue moved and the entrance was suddenly closed. The hunters panicked, but some tried to remain calm and one even attempted to open the gate. However, the group was shocked when a giant guardian statue moved and killed the hunter. The events unfolding before the hunters left them shocked and panicked. Ji-woo quickly realized that the king's statue was attacking in a pattern, and he knew there must be a set of rules that needed to be followed in the temple. He instructed everyone to get down as the statue emitted laser light from its eyes, burning several hunters to death and causing Mr. Song to lose his left hand. As the group watched in horror, one of the hunters tried to run away, but was also burned by the statue. Strangely, when the hunters remained still, the statue didn't seem to respond. Ji-woo remembered the orders written on the stone, the first of which was to worship the king. He quickly led the group in bowing their heads in worship, and the statue didn't attack them. The other hunters followed Jinwoo's lead, and the tension in the room began to ease as they all worshipped the king's statue. Ji-woo then remembered the second command, which is to praise the Lord. One of the hunters tried to recite the praises, but unfortunately, the statue stepped on them and killed them. The remaining hunters were now even more panicked, unsure of how to avoid the statue's attacks. Panicked, the hunters ran to find a safe place as the surrounding guardian statues moved again, and many of them were killed. Ji-woo noticed an instrument statue and instructed the remaining hunters to hide nearby. He noticed that one of the hunters was standing right in front of the instrument statue, and the king's statue didn't attack them. Jinwoo and Juhi stood in front of another instrument statue, but it didn't move like the others. Jinwoo realized that only one person could approach the statue, so he rushed to find another one. However, before he could reach it, he was thrown near the giant statue and attacked with all its might. Despite his injury, Jinwoo managed to get to another instrument statue, but he had to lose a leg in the process. Juhi, the healer hunter, tried to heal Jinwoo's leg, but her strength was failing and she was unable to help him. Suddenly, the king's statue issued something from the ground, revealing a place for a sacrificial ritual. The hunters realized that the third commandment was to show their loyalty, and they all thought the same thing. The hunters realized that one person must be sacrificed at the altar, and they were all terrified at the thought of dying. The appearance of the altar sparked a conflict among the group, with Mr. Song, the leader of the raid, feeling responsible. He stepped into the circle of the altar, and a red flame appeared around it. The other hunters also entered the altar, and 5 more red flames appeared, one for each person in the circle. Suddenly, blue flames surrounded the altar and the warrior statues on them all moved. The entrance, which had previously been closed, was now wide open, and one of the hunters saw this as an opportunity to escape. He ran, and to everyone's surprise the soldier statue didn't attack him and he made it out. Jinwoo realized that this was a trap, and the third commandment, to prove their loyalty, was a test. He understood that the entrance had been deliberately opened to test their loyalty. The remaining hunters were now trapped in the altar circle, surrounded by the warrior statues and the red and blue flames. Jinwoo told the remaining hunters not to leave the room, and he noticed that the red flames around the altar had disappeared after one of the hunters left. The blue flames also disappeared within a certain time frame, and the warrior statues didn't attack the hunters even when they were close. Jinwoo realized that they had to wait until the blue flames disappeared completely. One of the hunters expressed his worry, thanking Jinwoo for his instincts that kept him alive, but he didn't want to take the risk of dying in the altar. He apologized and left the other 3 hunters behind. Mr. Song, Juhi, and Jinwoo were now in a complicated situation. As time passed, the blue flames around them disappeared, but the entrance also closed. Mr. Song, with a heavy heart, ordered Jinwoo and Juhi to leave, but Juhi had run out of energy and couldn't stand up, so they were unable to escape. When Jinwoo lost one of his legs, he made the decision to stay behind and face the warrior statues alone. He knew he was the weakest and most unreliable hunter, but he wanted to do what he could to help. He asked Mr. Song to take Juhi and leave, giving Juhi his manhua as a memento for all the help she had given him. Mr. Song had no choice but to leave Jinwoo behind. Jinwoo was now alone, facing the warrior statues as the blue flames disappeared and the entrance closed. The statues began to attack Jinwoo, and he tried to defend himself as best he could, but the vast difference in strength put Jinwoo on the verge of death. As he lay on the altar, a warrior statue was ready to strike the final blow. In his final moments, Jinwoo didn't want to die and prayed for a miracle. Suddenly, the altar reacted and a mysterious screen appeared, displaying the message that he has completed all the requirements. The screen gave Jinwoo the option to accept or reject its offer, and he only had 2 seconds to make a decision. If he refused, he would die. With no other choice, Jinwoo accepted the offer and the screen displayed a message congratulating him on becoming a player now. Suddenly, a bright light enveloped Jinwoo's body and he opened his eyes to find himself in the hospital. At first, Jinwoo thought that the incident at the temple and the double dungeon had been a dream, as his leg was intact and he didn't feel any injuries. However, 2 men from the Korean Hunter Investigation Association met him at the hospital, explaining that he had been asleep for 3 days and the 5 surviving hunters were back to their normal activities. Juhi was still undergoing treatment due to deep trauma. Jinwoo realized that the terrible events he experienced were real. The investigators from the association came to see Jinwoo because they suspected that he had a double awakening, a rare occurrence in which a hunter possesses 2 distinct abilities. They wanted to ask Jinwoo some questions about his experiences and his new abilities. It was impossible for Jinwoo to have survived the violent events he described, yet when a group of hunters from the White Tiger Guild arrived at the location, they found Jinwoo alone on the altar. The room described by the surviving hunter had disappeared. Jinwoo was confused because he remembered being in a large room during the incident. He wondered if he had received a second resurrection, a rare occurrence in which a hunter is brought back to life after dying. The association member explained that, generally, a hunter only received 1 awakening, but there were cases where a hunter could obtain multiple awakenings and gain even greater power. He showed Jinwoo a hunter's strength detector, and Jinwoo's value was 10, which was very low compared to the weakest hunter's value of 70. The two investigators apologized for their suspicion and left, and soon after, Jinwoo's sister Jina came to visit him. However, she couldn't see the mysterious screen that Jinwoo could see. When she left, Jinwoo received a message containing information about the screen, which only he could see. Jinwoo received a message from the mysterious screen explaining that it was a system designed to help player development. If he didn't follow the system, he would be penalized, but if he followed it successfully, he would receive rewards or prizes. Another message contained preparations for becoming stronger, and Jinwoo saw a mission that had to be completed within a certain time. Jinwoo thought this was ridiculous and decided not to participate in the mission that was due that day. However, when the time was up, he received another message stating that he was being punished for not completing the mission. Suddenly, he felt a great earthquake and found himself in a desert. A giant centipede monster appeared and was about to attack Jinwoo. A message from the system appeared again, stating that the punishment for not completing the mission was to survive the monster attack. Jinwoo couldn't refuse because his life was at stake, and he was now being punished by the system. Jinwoo found himself in the desert, and had to survive for 4 hours from the attack of a giant centipede monster. He used all his strength to dodge and avoid being caught, and after 4 hours, he managed to survive. When he returned to the hospital, he received a message from the system containing a reward for completing the mission. From that day on, Jinwoo began to follow the orders of the system, completing the missions given to him every day. These missions included physical training, such as push-ups and running. After becoming tired from completing his daily missions, Jinwoo received a message from the system offering him a recovery gift. He accepted it, and his body was enveloped in a light that eliminated his physical fatigue. Jinwoo checked the system's screen and saw that his status was still at level 1, but he would receive points for completing the missions. There was also an inventory screen where he could store weapons and other items. Jinwoo discovered a screen displaying his skills and strengths that he could use. He began to enjoy the game and received another message containing a mysterious box. Inside the box was a key that could be used to enter a dungeon instantly. The message also indicated where the key could be used. Jinwoo headed to the designated location, which was a door at a station. He was curious and tried the key, and a gate appeared. As he entered the gate, it suddenly closed behind him. This dungeon was different from others because ordinary humans were unaware of its existence. Jinwoo regretted his decision a little, fearing that he might not be able to return. He received another message stating that he couldn't leave the dungeon unless he either killed the boss or used a hearthstone. This hearthstone was a reward Jinwoo received after completing the punishment mission in the desert. Suddenly, Jinwoo felt the presence of a frightening force and saw a pair of bloodshot eyes and sharp teeth at the end of the hall, charging towards him to attack. Jinwoo was confronted by a wolf monster named Steel Fang Raikan. He panicked, as he was already injured and now had to face an even stronger monster. However, he was able to surprisingly dodge the monster's attack. He wondered how his body could be so light. Feeling more confident, Jinwoo threw a punch and was surprised by the power it contained. The monster was knocked out, but a few hits were not enough to kill it. Jinwoo realized he needed to use a magic weapon. He remembered using Mr. Song's weapon in the double dungeon and checked his inventory on the system screen. To his relief, the weapon was still there, and he used it to slash the monster to death. He received a message stating that he had leveled up by defeating the wolf monster. Jinwoo was face to face with not one, but 2 of the same monsters. He had been terrified before, but now he was filled with a fighting mentality. He easily defeated the wolves and checked the system screen, seeing that he had earned 5 points for the victory. These points could be used to increase various aspects of Jinwoo's abilities, such as strength, speed, endurance, and intelligence. Jinwoo decided to put the points towards increasing his strength. As he continued to defeat monsters, Jinwoo became more familiar with the system and how to use it to his advantage. Not only did he gain points from defeating monsters, but he also received various items that could be sold in the in-game market for gold. This gold was added to Jinwoo's inventory. As he wondered why the gate hadn't opened yet, even though he had defeated so many monsters, a pack of wolves appeared in the distance. But Jinwoo was no longer intimidated. He had raised his strength level and was confident in his ability to defeat the wolves easily. As the fighting raged on, Jinwoo easily defeated a group of wolves. Suddenly, a message from the system appeared, announcing that Jinwoo had received the title of Wolf Slayer. Despite his victories, Jinwoo was still unable to leave the dungeon. He considered using a hearthstone to escape, but his determination to become stronger kept him fighting. Jinwoo continued to explore the instant dungeon and encountered a group of 8 monsters called Razor Claw, Briga, and Shadow. He defeated them easily as well. As Jinwoo entered the next room, he was surprised by a swift attack from a monster. He was thrown to the ground and his sword was broken with a single strike. Suddenly, Jinwoo was confronted by a giant snake monster named Blue Venom Fanged Kasaka. The monster possessed terrifying speed and power, and Jinwoo was quickly overpowered. His only weapon was broken, and he struggled to survive against the overwhelming difference in strength. But Jinwoo's determination burned bright. He wanted to rise above his past as one of the weakest, always looked down upon by others. His fighting spirit only grew stronger. He was determined to defeat this monster. Finally, Jinwoo managed to injure the Blue Venom Fanged Kasaka. Despite having no weapon, he did not give up. He climbed atop the snake's head and firmly gripped it with his bare hands. His strength may not have been at its maximum, but it had at least increased. With all his might, he continued to hold on until the monster was defeated. A message from the system appeared, announcing that Jinwoo's level had significantly risen. Another message soon followed, stating that Jinwoo had defeated the dungeon boss. As a reward, the system presented Jinwoo with an item called Kasaka's Venom Fang, which could harden the skin, as well as a dagger made from the fang of the defeated snake monster. This special weapon had the ability to paralyze enemies with a single scratch, as well as cause them to bleed, losing 1% of their life every second. Suddenly, a message appeared once again, saying that the boss has been defeated and the dungeon will be restored to normal. Suddenly, a bright light filled the dungeon before disappearing. As Jinwoo prepared to return home, he was approached by a soldier who informed him of a large monster that had emerged from a nearby dungeon and was causing chaos. Without realizing it, Jinwoo could feel the instincts of a monster stirring within him. He rushed to the scene and saw that the hunters were struggling against the monster. He also spotted Ji fighting nearby, still visibly traumatized by the battle. With lightning speed, Jinwoo jumped and threw his broken sword, causing the monster to fall. The other hunters finished off the rest. The other hunters were surprised by Jinwoo's sudden intervention. Jinwoo left without revealing his identity to the other hunters. His level was now 18 and his strength was increasing thanks to the missions given to him by the system. His body was also getting stronger and taller. Jina noticed the differences, but her attitude remained the same. Jinwoo simply told her that he had been exercising regularly. Looking at his already muscular body, Jinwoo decided not to add any more points to his strength. He wanted to maximize the points he had, so he added them to his agility instead. Despite his new powers, Jinwoo still struggled to make money because he was only recognized as a rank E hunter by the Hunter Union. Even high-class hunters could earn a salary from the guild they joined. Jinwoo's financial difficulties led him to accept any invitation to join a raid. He was invited to join one again, but his role was only as a porter. The raid was led by a C-rank hunter named Hwang Dong-suk, along with several other C and D rank hunters. In total, there were 10 hunters on this raid. As usual, when Jiwoo arrived, he was ridiculed by the other hunters because of his title as the weakest hunter. This time, Jiwoo needed help carrying the goods and was accompanied by a D-rank hunter named Yu Jinho. It was clear that Hwang Dong-suk had made excessive preparations, with expensive clothes and weapons. Such specialized fighting equipment is common among hunters to support them in battle. Hunters can buy shields, weapons, or special clothing to aid in combat, but the high price makes it almost impossible for many to afford such equipment. The group was about to enter a C-rank gate. Before leaving, Jinwoo added points to his senses or detection. Jinwoo also asked Dong-suk why there were no healer-type hunters present. Dong-suk explained that they were all attack-type hunters and were used to going in and out of gates in this area. Without hesitation, the hunters entered the dungeon. This was Jinwoo's first C-rank gate, and Jinho's first raid. As they made their way through the dungeon, Jinho kept talking and wouldn't stop. Jinwoo found him strange and amusing. Eventually, the hunters arrived at a cave passage. They were surprised to find no monsters there. Jinwoo used his sense of hearing and realized there was an insect monster above them. The combination of defense and attack on this team was strong, and Dong-suk's experienced fighting skills made it easy for them to defeat the group of monsters. Watching the team fight, Jinwoo sensed the ruthlessness of the hunters. He began to suspect that something was off about this team. They continued to explore the dungeon until they reached the spider monster's lair. The monsters were sleeping, and the hunters realized that this was the boss. They didn't want to fight it, they just wanted to take the abundant monotones in the lair. Defeating the boss would mean that the dungeon would be closed forever, so they preferred to avoid it and simply take the monotones. Suddenly, the team ordered Jinwoo and Jinho to guard the area while they left for a short time, promising to return soon. As Jinwoo and Jinho walked through the dungeon, Jinwoo couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about the other hunters who were with them. His suspicions were confirmed when they suddenly blew up the entrance to the boss's lair, trapping Jinwoo and Jinho inside. Jinho looked panicked by the situation. It was then that Jinwoo realized that these hunters were not who they appeared to be. He had heard rumors of a group of two-faced hunters who would stop at nothing to further their own interests, even if it meant endangering or killing their fellow hunters. These lizards, as Jinwoo came to think of them, were expert at covering up their crimes with lies, knowing that outsiders would never know the truth of what happened within the dungeon. Jinwoo realized that the lizards had planned this all along. They intended to sacrifice Jinwoo and Jinho to the boss, knowing that when the boss woke up and then fell asleep again, they could come back and steal any valuable stones or Jinho's expensive fighting equipment. They would then make up a story about an accident, claiming that Jinwoo and Jinho were killed by the boss. But Jinwoo was determined not to go down without a fight. As the boss of the dungeon awakened and prepared to attack Jinwoo and Jinho, Jinho panicked. This was his first raid, and he had never faced the boss before. He trembled with fear as he realized the danger they were in. But Jinwoo, who saw himself as the stronger of the two, stepped forward and reassured Jinho that he will protect him. Jinho was unaware of Jinwoo's true strength, but he trusted in his fellow hunter's words. Jinwoo then told Jinho to back off, as he would handle the monster himself. A bright light emitted from Jinwoo's hand, and he unsheathed the dagger he had just acquired. His fighting mentality was improving, and he no longer felt fear. The spider monster came at them, but Jinwoo was ready. He launched a barrage of attacks at the monster, surprising Jinho. The monster they faced had thick skin, making it difficult to damage, and its single blows could shatter a human body. But Jinwoo was determined to take it down, no matter the cost. As Jinwoo approached the monster again, it secreted a poisonous liquid, but Jinwoo was able to dodge it. He knew he had to keep his distance and be even faster, so he activated the sprint skill in his system, which increased his movement speed. This time, Jinwoo targeted the monster's head, leaping at it and striking it with his sword. He also activated the poison effect of his weapon, but the monster was able to neutralize it. Despite his increased speed, Jinwoo was unable to overpower the spider monster. He found himself cornered and ready to be hit, but he quickly jumped onto the monster's head and began attacking its eyes. He tried to reactivate his skills in succession, but the monster was able to keep up with Jinwoo's attacks. However, Jinwoo's weapon had a second effect called Blend, which caused the monster to lose 1% of its life per second. The monster was now powerless, and Jinwoo was able to deliver the final blow that defeated it. After defeating the boss, a message from the system appeared indicating that Jinwoo's level had increased significantly. His level was now 21, and he had gained a significant amount of strength. Jinho was stunned by the fight and couldn't believe that the boss had been defeated by one person. He had suspected that Jinwoo's rank was fake, but now he realized that Jinwoo was a formidable opponent. He was afraid of Jinwoo at first, but now he saw him as a good person. After the fight, Jinho approached Jinwoo and offered him a drink as a sign of gratitude. They then rushed to harvest the abundant monster stones. But not long after, there was an explosion. The lizards had returned, amazed to see that Jinwoo and Jinho were still alive, along with the defeated spider boss. Dong-suk, one of the lizards, had assumed that it was Jinho who had defeated the boss, as it was impossible for a rank E hunter like Jinwoo to beat it. He had underestimated Jinwoo and realized that he would be problematic to deal with. So Dong-suk cunningly offered Jinho the chance to join their team, with the condition that he must kill Jinwoo. If he refused, then they both would die there. Jinho, knowing that Jinwoo had saved his life, refused the offer. Dong-suk was furious when he received the answer, and he decided to kill both Jinwoo and the other person. However, an emergency message from the system interrupted their confrontation. The message contained a mission to eliminate those who pose a threat to the player. Without hesitation, Jinwoo and the other person began their attack. Jinwoo was quickly overpowered and thrown to the ground. He tried to reason with his opponents, but they were stubborn and unyielding. One of them even mocked him as they closed in. Jinwoo, fueled by anger and the pain of their past actions, launched a swift counterattack. The first person fell before them, and the others panicked at Jinwoo's seemingly invisible attack. Despite his doubts about whether he was doing the right thing by killing other humans, Jinwoo knew that this was the reality he had to face. If he didn't fight back, he would be killed instead. One of the hunters used a fire magic attack against Jinwoo, but his speed was no match for Jinwoo's. 2 more people were taken out, and Jinwoo was battered and bruised, but no one could match his speed and agility. He used his knife to finish off another hunter, displaying the weapon's bleeding and paralysis effects. Dong-suk was stunned as he watched 7 of his comrades fall in an instant, leaving only him standing. Dong-suk refused to accept defeat and used all of his abilities against Jinwoo, but Jinwoo was able to easily fend him off. As his death approached, Dong-suk begged for mercy and offered Jinwoo an abundance of crystal stones in exchange for his life. He also warned Jinwoo that he would get into serious trouble if he knew who Dong-suk's brother was. However, Jinwoo was not swayed by Dong-suk's desperate pleas. With a swift motion, he beheaded Dong-suk and a message from the system appeared saying that the mission accomplished, and the reward has been awarded. This time, Jinwoo received a recovery item, more points, and a new skill called Bloodlust, which allows him to release energy and make his target feel afraid. Jinho watched in shock as all of this unfolded. Jiwoo told him they had to leave and that this dungeon would be closed forever. Jinwoo's financial situation began to improve as he sold all of the monotones he had acquired and treated his sister to a meal at home. Another message from the system appeared, granting Jinwoo a new skill that would automatically neutralize any poison in his body. Jinwoo decided to test out the venom monster item he had obtained a few days ago, and was pleasantly surprised to discover that it had a new effect that could quickly neutralize poison and regenerate his body. Later, Jinho met with Jinwoo at a cafe and thanked him profusely for saving his life. Jinho then proposed forming a hunter's guild and invited Jinwoo to join. Jinwoo initially refused, but Jinho insisted on explaining further. He told Jinwoo that the requirements to form a guild were at least 20 raids, and they had only completed 19 so far. Jinho promised to give Jinwoo a large share and to keep his strength a secret if that was what Jinwoo desired. All Jinho wanted was to form a guild and fulfill his father's dream of establishing a hunter's guild that would eventually recruit S-rank hunters as leaders. He explained that his father saw great potential in the hunter world as a business opportunity. Jinwoo asked what benefits he would receive if he joined the guild, and Jinho handed him a contract letter, which surprised Jinwoo. Jinwoo was offered $300,000 for completing just 19 more raids, and while the money was certainly tempting, it wasn't the only reason he agreed to join Jinho's guild. Jinwoo also wanted to continue improving his fighting skills and saw the guild as an opportunity to do so. He did have one condition, however, that he and Jinho would be the only ones to enter the dungeon, and they would only hire other hunters under certain conditions, such as a minimum of 10 hunters for a raid. The remaining hunters agreed to this arrangement, and waited outside while Jinwoo and Jinho explored the dungeon. Finally, Jinwoo and Jinho agreed to form a guild. With the help of the mysterious system that always gave Jinwoo orders to train physically, everything seemed easy for Jinwoo, who even surpassed the limits he had set for himself. Unbeknownst to Jinwoo, news of Dong-suk's death had spread far and wide, reaching the ears of his younger brother, Hwang Dong-su, a rank S hunter living in America. Dong-su obtained data on Jinwoo and Jinho, the 2 survivors of the accident, and set his sights on them. Dong-su couldn't believe that his brother had died so easily and suspected that Jinwoo and Jinho had framed him. He vowed to return to Korea and kill them. The news of Dong-suk's death also reached the Korean Hunter Investigation Union, who feared that Dong-su would not let his brother's death go unavenged. Jinwoo, meanwhile, continued to practice and received an instant dungeon key thanks to the extra points he had earned from his daily missions. This key was a red Class S item, and without hesitation, Jinwoo headed to the designated location. When he arrived, he found a larger gate and walked through it, knowing that this was a rank S dungeon and that he would have to be extra careful. This particular dungeon was located on Jeju Island, where an S-rank gate had once been opened. The island had instantly turned into a desert that was uninhabitable for humans. Even a team of S-rank hunters had been unable to complete the dungeon, and Jeju Island remained a barren wasteland to this day. Inside the dungeon, Jinwoo found a city engulfed in flames that were still burning. As Jinwoo faced off against the 3-headed monster known as Hell's Gatekeeper, Cerberus, he knew he had to use all of his skills to defeat it. Despite his best efforts, Jinwoo's attacks alone were not enough to bring down the beast. Desperate to turn the tide in his favor, Jinwoo activated his sprint skills, which made his attacks even faster and more powerful. But even this was not enough to defeat Cerberus. As the monster prepared to unleash a deadly skill, Jinwoo was attacked and knocked to the ground. He managed to jump up and attack the monster, but again his efforts were in vain. Jinwoo's stamina was running low, and he was being cornered by the beast. Despite the odds against him, Jinwoo refused to give up. The fire inside him to be strong and overcome this challenge burned bright. Just when all seemed lost, Jinwoo activated his recovery skill, which gave him the strength to hold back the monster's fangs as it tried to eat him. With renewed energy, Jinwoo turned and attacked the monster repeatedly until he finally emerged victorious. After defeating a series of monsters, Jinwoo received a message from the system indicating that his level had significantly increased and that he had obtained several items as a reward. The first item was a necklace called the Warden's Necklace, which increased Jinwoo's agility and allowed him to detect the presence of nearby enemies. The second item Jinwoo received was a key to the Devil's Palace, a mysterious and dangerous location guarded by powerful monsters. Despite his reservations, Jinwoo decided to leave the palace for now and headed back to the sword practice site, where he encountered Mr. Song, a skilled swordsman and rank S hunter. As Mr. Song practiced with his student, Jinwoo noticed that his own body had undergone a transformation. His legs, which had been injured in a previous double dungeon event, were now fully healed. After their practice session, Mr. Song received a call inviting him to join a raid on a dungeon rank D. As they arrived at the location, Mr. Song was surprised to see Jinwoo and even more shocked to see that his legs were fully healed. The two joined forces, ready to take on the challenges that lay ahead. Jinwoo had always been grateful for the powers granted to him by his system, but this latest raid had shown him just how much they had impacted the lives of others as well. Not only was Mr. Song, a foreign hunter, affected by Jinwoo's abilities, but Juhee, who had also participated in the raid, was similarly surprised by the changes in Jinwoo's body. Even Mr. Song and another hunter, who had once left Jinwoo to face a dungeon alone, felt a sense of guilt and shame upon seeing him again. But Jinwoo wasn't the only one on this raid who had experienced the change in circumstances. Several convicts who were also hunters joined the group, seeking the opportunity to reduce their prison sentences by participating in the raid. One of these prisoners, Kang Taeshik, even requested to be the leader of the raid and, with the approval of Mr. Song, took on the role of chairman. As Jinwoo observed the diverse group of individuals brought together by this raid, he couldn't help but feel that something was off about the formation. Before they entered the dungeon, Mr. Song took a moment to thank Jinwoo for his role in helping to save the lives of other hunters during the double dungeon event. With this gratitude in mind, the group ventured into the dungeon, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As they progressed, they were confronted by a group of lowly goblin monsters, but the prisoners among them proved their combat skills by defeating them easily, with Mr. Song using his fire magic to great effect. The moral lesson from the story is to be cautious of people who appear trustworthy but may not have your best interests at heart. Always trust. As the third part of the manhwa unfolds, we are introduced to Mr. Song. With ease, he unleashes his fiery magic and decimates the horde of goblins. The group then comes upon a fork in the road, with 3 different paths to choose from. Taeshik, recognizing that this particular dungeon is populated by weak creatures, suggests that they split up to cover more ground. He proposes that if any of them come across the boss, they should immediately return to this junction to inform the others. With a plan in place, Taeshik sets off down the right path, accompanied by the convict. Meanwhile, Jiwoo detects a powerful aura in the left aisle and joins forces with Mr. Song and Juhee to investigate. Mr. Kim and another hunter head down the middle path. As Taeshik leads the way, Jinwoo can't shake the feeling that something is off. The prisoner, armed with newfound strength, dispatches the goblins with ease, but Jinwoo is soon to realize that Taeshik has other motives for bringing the convict along. During a lull in the fighting, Mr. Kim approaches Jinwoo and expresses regret for abandoning him during the double dungeon incident. Pushing forward on their quest, the group suddenly crosses paths with Taeshik at a remote location. To their shock and horror, they discover that the convicts have all been murdered by Taeshik's hand. Jinwoo senses a strong killing aura and urgently calls for his team to return. Just as they arrive, they are caught off guard by an attack from Taeshik. Jinwoo manages to fend off the attack, much to Taeshik's surprise, as this is the first time someone has been able to match his speed. From a distance, Taeshik threatens to kill them all. It becomes clear that this was all part of a premeditated plan, as Taeshik reveals that he had been hired to carry out the assassination of the prisoners before entering the dungeon. The mastermind behind Taeshik's actions is revealed to be a grieving father seeking retribution for the suffering of his child at the hands of the prisoners. Taeshik, however, is driven by a desire for profit and doesn't attach any moral weight to the mission. He admits that Jinwoo was not originally intended to be a target, but Mr. Kim's witnessing of the execution forced Taeshik's hand. In the moment, Jinwoo is horrified to see Mr. Kim's life slipping away. Despite Juhee's best efforts to heal him, the loss of blood is too great, and her magic is powerless. Jinwoo urges Mr. Kim to hang on and never give up. On his deathbed, Mr. Kim bows his head in apology and asks for Jinwoo's forgiveness, unable to make amends in any other way. After Mr. Kim's final breath, Taeshik taunts the group from a distance, promising to craft a believable cover-up for their deaths. He boasts of his assassin skills and claims that Jinwoo could never keep up with his speed. This ignites Mr. Song's fury, who steps forward to engage in battle. Juhee lends her support with her protective magic. Despite being a magic-type hunter, Mr. Song is skilled in sword fighting as well. Taeshik strikes with lightning speed, but Mr. Song is able to catch him off guard. Although Taeshik's movements are graceful, Mr. Song is no match for his speed and is quickly injured. Juhee's timely support saves Mr. Song from further harm. Taeshik becomes incensed and sets his sights on Juhee, but once again Mr. Song rises to the challenge and fights back. Taeshik's attacks intensified as he aimed for Mr. Song, but the latter fought back with his magic. Though Taeshik managed to inflict slight injuries, he was running out of patience. Just as he was about to deliver the final blow, Jinwoo intervened, using his dagger to defend Mr. Song. Taeshik was taken aback by Jinwoo's quick thinking and seamless movements. Mr. Song and Juhee were equally surprised by Jinwoo's abilities. Taeshik then commented that Jinwoo's skills were not typical of an E-rank hunter. He suspected that Jinwoo had kept his true abilities hidden, perhaps even receiving multiple awakenings. Despite this, Taeshik was confident in his own combat experience, believing it to be superior to Jinwoo's. The tension between Taeshik and Jinwoo escalated as the two skilled hunters clashed in combat. Taeshik brandished two knife blades, his movements lightning fast and almost invisible to the onlookers, Mr. Song and Juhee, who could only watch in awe. However, Jinwoo was quick to react, deflecting Taeshik's attacks with expert precision. Despite Jinwoo's best efforts, he struggled to match Taeshik's speed. The two continued their intense exchange of blows, each one trying to gain the upper hand. As the fight between Jinwoo and Taeshik escalated, Taeshik continued to taunt Jinwoo, egging him on to fight faster. Juhee offered her support from the sidelines, boosting Jinwoo's speed and power. However, Taeshik grew frustrated with Juhee's interference and was about to attack her, but Mr. Song intervened, giving Jinwoo the chance to be caught off guard. Taeshik took advantage of this and inflicted several wounds on Jinwoo. Despite his desire to kill, Taeshik's killing spree was interrupted by an alarm from the system announcing a new mission to eliminate a dangerous player. Jinwoo declared that the fight was far from over and, now without any reservations, was ready to take down Taeshik. The intense battle between the two hunters continued, with each showcasing their exceptional skills as assassin hunters specializing in speed, agility, and knife play. Suddenly, Jinwoo activated his sprint skill, causing his movements to quicken, leaving Taeshik unable to dodge his attack. As the intense fight continued, the hunter's specialties in speed and agility were put to the test. Jinwoo activated his sprint skill, allowing him to move even faster, and finally managed to land a hit on Taeshik. The paralysis and bleed skills also took effect, leaving Taeshik stunned and unable to defend himself. Although Taeshik acknowledged the impressive effects of Jinwoo's knife, he didn't have much time to admire them as the poison slowly took hold of his body. In the end, Taeshik was defeated and his body slowly disappeared, leaving his whereabouts unknown. Jinwoo was caught off guard as he frantically searched for Taeshik's whereabouts. But he was lucky enough to defend himself. Taeshik revealed his greatest skill, the ability to turn invisible, and no one had ever survived it before. However, Jinwoo's recovery skill was quickly activated and his wound disappeared, leaving Taeshik stunned. With his instincts now heightened, Jinwoo skillfully dodged all of Taeshik's attacks, leaving him amazed once again. As Taeshik's killing instinct grew stronger, Jinwoo could sense the direction of his attacks, even though he couldn't see him. Taeshik launched an attack straight ahead, but Jinwoo, with his eyes closed, activated his bloodless skill, rendering Taeshik unconscious. With ease, Jinwoo then plunged his knife into Taeshik's still body. As Taeshik lay dying, he wondered who Jinwoo really was. He was an A-rank assassin with healer abilities and deadly effects. Despite his rambling, Jinwoo activated his paralysis and bleed skills, ultimately defeating Taeshik. A message from the system appeared, announcing the completion of the mission and the rewards to be given. Jinwoo obtained a stone containing the power of his defeated opponent. By destroying the stone, Jinwoo would absorb the skill inside. After the fight, Mr. Song and Juhee approached Jinwoo to thank him for his help. Mr. Song asked what Jinwoo's next steps would be, and Jinwoo simply stated that he would defeat the boss and close the dungeon forever. As Jinwoo made his way towards the boss's room, Mr. Song promised to wait outside and report the situation to the Union. But as Jinwoo progressed, he stumbled upon a prisoner who was feigning death. Instead of leaving the man behind, Jinwoo took him with him to the boss's chamber and issued a warning that if he continued his misdeeds, he would not be spared. However, the goblins soon attacked and killed the prisoner, leaving Jinwoo to face the boss alone. With ease, Jinwoo defeated the boss and brought the dungeon to a close. The news of Taeshik's defeat spread quickly, attracting the attention of the Vice Guild leader. Upon arriving at the dungeon, they were shocked to learn of Taeshik's downfall, as the brutal assassin was renowned for his strength. The Vice Guild leader asked for details on what happened in the dungeon, as they couldn't wrap their head around the idea that someone like Taeshik could be taken down. Jin Chul reunites with Jinwoo and is taken aback by the drastic physical changes he has undergone. Despite this, Jinwoo senses a strong aura of strength within him. He realizes that he may not be strong enough to beat Jin Chul. Jin Chul expresses regret that Taeshik, one of his members, tried to harm Jiwoo, and informs him that the Union has taken care of the person who ordered Taeshik's arrest. He also wants to know who killed Taeshik in the dungeon. While Jinwoo thinks that his fighting journey might have to end behind bars, Mr. Song confidently states that he was the one who took down Taeshik. Jin Chul, a hunter of rank C, had been accompanied by a highly skilled hunter-healer of rank B. As they completed their mission, Jin Chul approached Mr. Song and informed him that they needed to file a report with the investigators. During this downtime, Jin Chul took the opportunity to have a conversation with Mr. Song and inquire about why he had lied to protect him. Mr. Song explained that he believed Jinwoo was hiding his true abilities for a reason and wanted to repay him for saving his life twice by encouraging him to continue fighting. As the investigators prepared to depart, Jin Chul pulled Jinwoo aside and warned him to be cautious. He assured Jinwoo that he wouldn't suspect anything, but warned that their lives, as well as Jinho's, could be in peril. This was because Dong Su, a notorious hunter of rank S, was seeking revenge for the death of his older brother and may target them. After the investigation had come to a close, everyone went their separate ways. Juhi held on to the memento that Jinwoo had given her, feeling a sense of nostalgia as she returned it. She shared with Jinwoo that she had been timid in the past, but her time as a hunter had given her newfound courage. However, she had decided to retire and return to her hometown, thanking Jinwoo for his help along the way. Jinwoo gracefully accepted her decision and said goodbye as Juhi went on her way. Meanwhile, Jinwoo and Jinho had set their sights on starting a guild and had begun the process of recruiting new estate hunters to join them. As Jinwoo and Jinho arrived at the designated location, they were taken aback by the group of hunters gathered there. Some were injured, others were drunk, and still others were mere schoolchildren. The sight left Jinwoo in disbelief. Jinho explained that he was just there to fulfill the guild's requirement of 10 hunters for a raid and that Jinwoo should wait outside. According to the contract, each hunter would receive 3 million won for the raid, with the stipulation that they not reveal anything they saw or heard during the mission. The hunters were all bewildered, wondering how 2 people could dare to enter a high-level dungeon on their own. Undeterred, Jinwoo and Jinho ventured into the dungeon. The waiting hunters were in awe as the dungeon soon closed behind them, a sign that the boss had been defeated. To everyone's surprise, Jinho announced that they would be heading to the next 2 dungeons. It turned out that Jinho had purchased all the C-rank dungeons from the guild for a hefty price, making it impossible for other guilds or individuals to enter them. This sudden move caused quite a stir among the members of the guild department. Among the gathering of hunters was an investigator from the White Tiger Guild, who was trying to make sense of what was happening. After inquiring about Jinwoo, the investigator had a hunch that something was amiss. He wondered about the extent of Jinwoo's strength and believed that it could be a profitable opportunity. The investigator instructed his assistant to arrange a meeting with Jinwoo, convinced that the young man was concealing exceptional abilities. Jinwoo embarked on his second raid and was now empowered by his previous victory over Taeshik. He found that the monsters were no match for him and that his level was steadily increasing. During the raid, he acquired 2 new skills, Vital Strike and Advanced Dagger Arts. Vital Strike was a deadly active skill that allowed Jinwoo to target and strike the enemy's vulnerable points. Advanced Dagger Arts, on the other hand, boosted the power of his knife and heightened his knife attacks. As Jinwoo continued to fight, he grew stronger and more formidable, causing the monsters to cower at the mere sight of him. Jinwoo received an unusual message from the system offering a mysterious mission. His level had reached 39, and his strength continued to grow. 2 investigators from the White Tiger Guild arrived at Jinwoo's raid site and were shocked to see him leisurely resting outside, almost like a playground. A young female hunter approached them and informed them that they were not allowed to enter the area as it was reserved for hunters who were waiting for their leader to exit the dungeon. In no time, Jinwoo and Jinho emerged from the dungeon and, once again, the entrance was sealed forever. The investigator was taken aback by the sight and realized that his instincts were spot on regarding Jin Woo. The investigator quickly made his way to Jin Woo and introduced himself. They then headed to a cafe to chat. Without delay, the investigator asked Jin Woo if he was interested in joining the White Tiger Guild, promising to pay double what Jinho had offered. Jin Woo replied that he wanted 600 billion, as Jinho had only paid him 300 billion. The investigator was taken aback by this and admitted that this was beyond their means. Jin Woo, feeling suspicious, decided to depart from the cafe. However, he couldn't shake off the thought of why the White Tiger Guild was so eager to recruit him. He then used his skills to make himself invisible and approached the investigator. He asked if they had been investigating him, and what information they had uncovered. The investigator admitted that they were astounded by Jin Woo's immense strength, as surviving 3 major events and clearing a C-rank dungeon with such ease is not something that can be attributed to luck. He stated that Jin Woo must be concealing his true power. Jin Woo questioned the investigator about what else he knows about him. The investigator responded that only he and his assistant were aware of Jin Woo's strength, which was exceptional and not just by chance. This made Jin Woo wary, and he made it clear that he wants his abilities to remain a secret. However, news of Jin Woo's quick clearance of the dungeon had caused a commotion among other guilds. The investigator couldn't keep it from his members. Jin Woo apologized for the inconvenience, and expressed his intention to sell the 3 C-rank dungeons he owns at a high price, to which the investigator was forced to agree. Before departing, Jin Woo gave the investigator a healing item for the wound on his cheek and said goodbye. Jin Woo quickly sent the investigator a message, despite feeling frustrated about having to spend money to purchase the dungeon. However, he deemed it a fair price for obtaining Jin Woo's phone number. The mysterious mission he received came to his mind and he ventured alone into the mountains. Jin Woo stumbled upon a mysterious portal and, without a second thought, stepped through it. Upon emerging, he found himself in a grand hall resembling a palace, surrounded by a squad of soldiers. Suddenly, a message from the system flashed before him, saying that he cannot exit the dungeon until every monster is defeated. The system store will be inaccessible and there will be no second chances for recovery after leveling up. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Jin Woo vowed to conserve his energy, determined to emerge victorious. With ease, Jin Woo took down the first soldier. He couldn't understand why the enemy had been so effortlessly defeated. All he had was heavy armor and sluggish movements. Jin Woo obtained a piece of armor that would enhance his defense, as well as a bag filled with 300 gold coins from the defeated warrior. But as he gazed into the distance, he saw more soldiers emerging in vast numbers. Undaunted, Jin Woo launched into battle, only to be taken aback by an unexpected, invisible strike. The realization dawned on him that there were assassin-type monsters among the troops with stealth abilities. Despite the newfound challenge, Jin Woo pressed on, ready for what lay ahead. And then, from above, a fire-wielding witch descended upon him. Jin Woo was starting to feel overwhelmed with fear as he saw archers approach him from every direction, ready to attack. Although he knew this place was dangerous, he had no choice but to face the challenge head-on. In a moment of clarity, Jin Woo realized he needed to use different skills for each type of monster in order to maximize his attack efficiency. He needed to use magic skills to strike the vitality of the magicians, physical strength for the knights, intuition for the assassins, and agility to take down the archers. The pressure was on for Jin Woo as he had to be both strategic and swift in order to survive this intense fight. Jin Woo was filled with regret as he realized that he had not invested enough points into intelligence according to the system. Despite this, he started his attack and managed to defeat several monsters. However, as the fight wore on, Jin Woo found himself growing increasingly exhausted and struggling to keep up with the relentless pace of the monsters. Even when he tried to rest and regain his energy, they showed no mercy, leaving him with no time to catch his breath. With only 66 energy remaining, Jin Woo mustered all of his strength and managed to defeat the horde of monsters that had surrounded him. The system then rewarded him with minerals to help recover from his exhaustion and a collection of valuable items. Through his bravery in battle, Jin Woo had not only regained his stamina, but had also acquired a generous amount of gold. As he continued on his journey, Jin Woo arrived at a cold, ominous gate, which sent shivers down his spine. With a deep breath, he pushed the door open and found himself in the presence of the king. A warrior dressed in red armor approached, introducing himself as the guardian of the room. As Jin Woo gazed upon the soldiers standing before him, memories of the terror he felt in the double dungeon flooded his mind. The knight leading them was the blood-red commander Igris, a formidable monster knight sworn to protect the king's throne. Jin Woo could sense the immense power radiating from Igris, and knew he was in for a difficult battle. The knight struck, but Jinwoo managed to dodge. With a single swing of his sword, Igris had the power to obliterate even the strongest pillars. Jinwoo launched an attack with his dagger, but it failed to penetrate the knight's armor. The knight retaliated with a massive explosion, which Jinwoo was lucky to dodge. However, the knight was incredibly fast, and Jinwoo found himself struggling to keep up. He realized that the knight possessed both speed and strength, as well as a robust defense, and concluded that his dagger was no match. The only way to defeat him, he thought, was to engage in a fair, one-on-one duel. The knight appeared to agree and holstered his sword, as the two prepared to face off. The knight then made the first move, charging towards Jinwoo with his weapon drawn. The knight's attack was so swift that Jinwoo didn't have time to dodge and was sent flying by the force of the impact. The knight continued to pummel him, causing a massive explosion. Jinwoo was in agony, but he refused to give up, declaring that he was strong even without a sword. He attempted to outmaneuver the knight with his speed, activating his sprint skill, but the knight matched his pace and the hit was ineffectual. Jinwoo was gradually pushed back, but he refused to surrender and fought back with all his might. Jinwoo's leg was seized and he was slammed with such force that his body was hurled across the room and landed in front of the king's throne. His heart sank as he wondered if this was the end of his life. The knight was closing in, sword in hand, but Jinwoo quickly summoned the strength from the skill imbued in his hand and fought back. The knight's sword was now poised at Jinwoo's neck, but he refused to give up. With the skill that reduced physical attacks on his hand, Jinwoo quickly pulled out a dagger and thrust it towards the knight's eye. Despite the knight managing to remove the dagger, Jinwoo used his skill to retrieve it and returned it to his hand. The two were now locked in a fierce battle once again. With a swift and powerful strike, Jinwoo plunged his dagger into the neck of the blood-red commander Igris, using a combination of his vital strike skills and all his might to drive the weapon deep into the knight's armor. As the knight fell to the ground, defeated, a message appeared from the system, informing Jinwoo of his level increase. With a feeling of triumph, Jinwoo emerged victorious from the intense battle. After a grueling battle with the blood-red commander Igris, Jinwoo emerged victorious. He was shaken and realized how close he had come to losing. Nevertheless, he was fortunate to come out on top. As a reward for his victory, Jinwoo received several valuable items including a red knight helmet, a run stone with the Dominator touch skill, a significant amount of gold, and a heartstone that would allow him to exit the dungeon. The red knight helmet would reduce the damage to his head and enhance his stamina and strength, while the run stone with the Dominator touch skill would give him the ability to manipulate objects without physical contact. With these new treasures in hand, Jinwoo was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Jinwoo was taken aback when he received the heartstone after defeating the knight. He realized that there must be a stronger boss in this dungeon. As he was about to catch his breath, a mysterious gate appeared before him. The system notified him that a job change mission was about to commence, and the longer he survived, the more points he would earn, ultimately elevating his job to a higher level. Jinwoo was taken by surprise as a horde of monsters emerged from the mysterious gate. He realized that this was a survival mission and decided to activate his skills. He attempted to hide, but was quickly discovered by a magician who could detect his presence. Jinwoo quickly sprang into action and launched a powerful attack, activating his skill glass to make himself temporarily invulnerable. However, he knew that the effect would only last for a minute, and he had to make the most of it. As Jinwoo engaged in battle with the soldiers, he soon realized that the number of enemies was far greater than he had anticipated. Despite his best efforts to defeat as many monsters as possible, the relentless stream of soldiers emerging from the mysterious gate was too much for him to handle. Panic set in as Jinwoo realized he had severely underestimated the difficulty of the mission. He was further taken aback by the revelation that he only had a limited time of 5 minutes to survive. Jinwoo found himself in a dire predicament, and quickly decided to use the Heartstone to escape the dungeon. However, the relentless army of soldiers did not give him a chance, and the Heartstone slipped from his grip. Lying before the oncoming army, Jinwoo refused to let his defeat come so easily. After all, he was known for his perseverance and determination. Jinwoo, not one to give up easily, quickly rose to his feet. He used his agility to maneuver around the army of soldiers, striking them down one by one. But despite his efforts, the number of enemies seemed endless. His determination wavered for a moment as he remembered the times he had been labeled as the weakest of the lot, constantly facing belittlement and criticism. In that moment of doubt, a vision of his past self, defeated and weak, appeared before him. Jinwoo suddenly found himself confronted by an apparition of his former self. This figment of his imagination questioned his motives for continuously putting himself in dangerous situations, despite always being on the brink of death. Ji-woo was taken aback by the conversation with his own subconscious, which pointed out that despite his physical changes and strength, he was still the same person inside and would continue to find himself in peril. With his energy depleted and facing an overwhelming number of enemies, Ji-woo was getting beaten to a pulp by the soldiers. He could only lie on the ground, semi-conscious and unable to defend himself. A soldier was poised to deliver the final blow, when suddenly, an alarm from the system blared, indicating a penalty for Jinwoo's failure to complete the daily mission. In that moment, Jinwoo realized he was on the brink of death, unable to move or fight back. As the countdown approached its end, Jinwoo's weakened form was filled with frustration and resignation. But just before the warrior could land the killing blow, a penalty mission suddenly kicked in, and Jinwoo was saved from death's embrace. He found himself in the middle of a barren desert, realizing that he had failed to complete his daily mission. Despite the harsh conditions, Jinwoo was filled with gratitude, knowing that he had narrowly escaped death once again and had been gifted with a second chance. He couldn't help but feel lucky. This is the fourth part of the manhwa begins by showing Jinwoo who was suddenly transported to a punishment place, but luck was on his side as it gave him the chance to recuperate. In this place, Jinwoo found a store run by the system, where he could purchase items to restore his health. Excited by this opportunity, Jinwoo realized he could level up before returning to the dreadful dungeon. Suddenly, an alarm from the system rang out, alerting Jinwoo to a mission to survive a monster attack for 4 hours. This time, instead of just running and hiding like before, Jinwoo was ready to fight. He bravely faced giant centipede monsters that kept appearing, and with his skills, he defeated them with ease. As a result of his bravery and skills, Jinwoo's level skyrocketed, leaving him only 3 minutes before he had to return to the dreadful dungeon. He was proud of himself for taking advantage of the opportunity, and for making the most of his time in this punishment place. Jinwoo was not satisfied with the efficiency of the dagger in battle. He realized that he needed a more powerful weapon to defeat the warriors. So, he opened the store on the system and began searching for a weapon that could help him. After scrolling through the options, Jinwoo stumbled upon the Night Killer, a weapon that caught his eye. With an abundance of gold, the high cost was not a hindrance for Jinwoo. He promptly purchased the dagger, eager to see its effects in battle. The Night Killer was unlike any other weapon Jinwoo had used before. Its unique ability to increase attack by 25 when used against enemies with armor made it a formidable weapon. Jinwoo was confident that this new weapon would give him the edge he needed to defeat the warriors and come out on top. In addition to the Night Killer, Jinwoo also bought a bandage to secure the dagger to his hands, so that he wouldn't accidentally drop it during battle. He then pulled out the rune stone he had just acquired. Recognizing its potential, Jinwoo shattered the stone, revealing a new skill, the Dominator's Touch. This skill allowed him to control items without physically touching them, making it an incredibly useful ability. With the punishment mission now completed, Jinwoo was ready to return to the dungeon. He was equipped with a powerful weapon, a secure grip, and a new skill that would give him a distinct advantage in battle. Jinwoo was eager to put his new abilities to the test and face whatever challenges lay ahead in the dungeon. Upon his return to the dungeon, Jinwoo was immediately met with a formidable army of soldiers, their numbers having increased since his last visit. The soldiers launched a full-scale attack, but Jinwoo was ready. With his increased levels, refined skills, and a new Night Killer dagger, Jinwoo effortlessly defeated the army of soldiers. He stood tall and proud, a testament to the power of hard work and determination. Mid-battle, Jinwoo was momentarily taken aback. He couldn't understand why his level wasn't rising despite defeating numerous soldiers. Something about this fight felt off, like there was something deeper at play. He suspected that magic was involved, as it seemed that only soldiers were attacking him. As he caught a glimpse of a gate, Jinwoo suddenly realized what was happening. This was a summoning magic, and no matter how many soldiers he defeated, there would be no end to the battle unless he found the summoner. Jinwoo steeled himself, determined to uncover the truth behind the never-ending stream of soldiers and put an end to the magic once and for all. Amidst the chaos of the battle, Jinwoo spotted a magician in the distance. He was certain that this magician was the summoner behind the endless horde of soldiers. Quickly, Jinwoo activated his skills, unleashing his latest ability, the dagger throw. With deadly precision, Jinwoo's dagger found its mark, striking the magician. Jinwoo attempted to disappear into the shadows using his stealth skills, but the magician was quick to detect him. Unbeknownst to Jinwoo, the magician's detection abilities had made him aware of Jinwoo's presence, setting the stage for a final showdown between the two powerful forces. Jinwoo's sharp eyes spotted no less than 5 magicians lurking nearby. With a flick of his wrist, he activated his Dominator's touch skill, calling his dagger back to his hand. Advancing towards one of the magicians, Jinwoo's fighting spirit burned bright, his determination fueled by the knowledge that the other magicians were cowering behind their summoned soldiers. It was time for Jinwoo to show what he was truly capable of, and put an end to this battle once and for all. With unshakable courage, Jinwoo charged forward, cutting down the soldiers that stood in his way. He activated his Dominator's touch skill, causing a fearsome effect on the enemy forces. Jinwoo fought on relentlessly, his formidable skills striking down most of the magicians. As he searched for the final magician, Jinwoo unleashed the full power of his Dominator's touch. The magician was quickly drawn in, unable to resist Jinwoo's control. With a swift and decisive blow, Jinwoo defeated the last of his foes and emerged victorious from the intense battle. The 3 remaining magicians, sensing defeat, combined their power to create a giant golem made from the remains of the fallen soldiers. Its massive strikes threatened to level everything in its path, but Jinwoo was quick to react. He gracefully dodged the golem's attacks, emerging unscathed from the resulting explosions. With the magicians exposed, Jinwoo charged forward, determined to end the battle. In a blur of motion, he closed in on the magicians and delivered a swift and decisive strike, ending their reign of terror once and for all. As the last of his enemies lay defeated, Jinwoo emerged victorious, his quick thinking and mastery of his skills having saved the day. With a triumphant grin, Jinwoo watched as the last of the soldiers crumpled to the ground. A notification from the system chimed, announcing that the mission was complete and he had successfully survived the monster attacks for 4.5 hours. The system would now analyze the battle and assign Jinwoo a suitable job based on his performance. Jinwoo hoped to become an assassin, given his speed and proficiency with the dagger in battle. However, the system did not allow him to choose his job and instead went ahead with its analysis. As he eagerly awaited the results, Jinwoo speculated about what kind of job he would be assigned. Finally, the system's analysis was complete, and a message appeared that wherever Jinwoo went, death would follow in his wake. His battles left a trail of fallen enemies and blood in their wake. Jinwoo was filled with excitement as he considered the possibility of having the power to control death itself. He dreamed of having an army of the dead at his beck and call, ready to carry out his every command. He envisioned himself as the ruler of this army, with the ability to summon them and dictate their movements without the need for anyone else's assistance. Jinwoo was taken aback by the news. He couldn't believe the job he was assigned was a necromancer, a magician who could summon monsters from other realms and form a powerful army at their command. This job had nothing to do with his combat skills and fighting experiences. He was shocked that his path in life had taken such an unexpected turn. As a necromancer, one has the power to summon monsters from other realms and command an army of their own, relying less on personal combat. Despite his initial confusion and disappointment, Jinwoo tried to see the silver lining. Perhaps, with this job, he could form an army as the system indicated, though it wouldn't necessarily make his summoned monsters any stronger. Jinwoo was faced with a decision, presented to him by the system. Despite the elevated status that he had achieved, he was told that it was all for naught. The system offered him the option to accept or refuse. Jinwoo was initially hesitant, but he ultimately refused the offer. The system then revealed to him that the class being offered was a necromancer, a hidden and rare ability that had the potential to be incredibly powerful. Jinwoo was intrigued. He couldn't help but think about the unique and rare abilities that came with being a necromancer. He realized that this could be his chance to gain an even greater power and solidify his place in the world. Jinwoo was familiar with a renowned S-rank hunter named Baek Yun-ho, who was part of the prestigious White Tiger Guild. It was said that Baek Yun-ho possessed a unique power, one that allowed him to transform into a fearsome beast. Hunters with hidden classes were highly sought after by large guilds, as they held immense power and prestige. Baek Yun-ho was one such hunter, and Jinwoo couldn't help but feel envious of the abilities that he possessed. Jinwoo knew that if he could unlock a hidden class of his own, he too could join the ranks of these powerful hunters, and make a name for himself in the world of hunting. Jinwoo was still grappling with uncertainty. He came across the lifeless body of a magician, and found himself lost in thought. The magician had skills similar to that of a necromancer, but their lack of combat abilities was apparent. The system kept directing Jinwoo to improve his fighting skills, and he realized that if he did so, his summoned beasts would grow stronger and level up alongside him. This no longer seemed like a solo journey, and Jinwoo was conflicted. Just then, a message from the system appeared. It simply read "Clear job," and Jinwoo was selected as a necromancer. This newfound power was both exhilarating and overwhelming, and Jinwoo couldn't help but wonder what lay ahead for him on this new path. Jinwoo had excelled in the recent survival mission, and his hard work was about to pay off. Based on the points he had accumulated, he was to be promoted to a higher class. To his surprise, the total exceeded expectations, and he was being promoted from necromancer to Shadow Lord. Jinwoo was shocked. He never imagined that the accumulation of points could result in an instant level up. Suddenly, a black aura enveloped his body and a system message appeared. His status was now that of a Shadow Lord, with the title of one who has passed through the tribulation. Jinwoo was filled with a sense of pride and accomplishment, knowing that he had achieved this level of power through his own strength and determination. He was eager to see what new challenges and opportunities awaited him as a Shadow Lord. With his newfound status as a Shadow Lord, Jinwoo was now able to sense the aura of corpses. He could hear their agonized screams and felt their pain. The system pointed to the body of a soldier, and informed Jinwoo that the skill shadow extraction could be used on the target. Jinwoo deduced that this must be a skill that allows him to turn corpses into summoned beasts. He issued the command to use the shadow extraction skill and spoke the words "arise." In an instant, the corpses released a black aura from within their bodies, and the aura coalesced and transformed into something new. Jinwoo was in awe of the power he now possessed, and he couldn't wait to see what other skills and abilities he would discover as a Shadow Lord. He was eager to use this newfound power to protect and defend those in need. Jinwoo had succeeded in using his shadow extraction skill to turn the fallen soldiers into shadow warriors. These shadow warriors possessed the same skills as they did in life and had the added bonus of being able to regenerate if defeated. However, extracting them required energy from Jinwoo himself. Despite this cost, Jinwoo and the magicians were able to extract a total of 30 shadow warriors, which were now under Jinwoo's command. A message from the system appeared, informing Jinwoo that he had reached the maximum of 30 shadow extractions. Jinwoo was thrilled with the result, now having an army of powerful shadow warriors at his disposal. He was eager to see how they would fare in battle and what new challenges lay ahead for him as a Shadow Lord. Jinwoo thought of the Red Knight, and wondered if he could extract him as well. The system informed Jinwoo that the target could be extracted, but to do so he would have to cancel the extraction of other shadow troops using the skill extraction cancel. The shadows that were cancelled would be sent to the afterlife. Jinwoo approached the shadow of the soldier and made the difficult decision to release the 11 weakest soldiers. He apologized for calling them back from the afterlife, but he knew it was necessary to extract the powerful Red Knight. Jinwoo was determined to use his power wisely and make choices that would benefit those around him. He hoped that his actions, even the difficult ones, would lead him and his shadow troops to success and fulfillment in the future. Jinwoo made the difficult decision to cancel the extraction of 11 shadows in order to extract the Red Knight. He approached the corpse of the Red Knight and issued the command to rise. However, a large black aura burst forth from the body and hit Jinwoo, indicating that the knight had refused the extraction. Jinwoo was faced with the reality that extracting this powerful monster was not going to be easy. He realized that the Red Knight had a higher level than the soldiers he had extracted earlier, and the length of time since its death made the extraction even more challenging. Despite the setback, Jinwoo remained determined. He still had 2 extraction opportunities left, and he was not going to give up until he succeeded in extracting the powerful Red Knight. He hoped that his perseverance would pay off in the end, and that the addition of this powerful monster to his team would help him achieve his goals. Jinwoo tried again, using his second and final chance to extract the shadow of the Red Knight. He spoke the command "rise," but once more, the knight refused to be extracted. Jinwoo pondered deeply, realizing that the knight was fiercely devoted to his former master, even in death. He then spoke to the knight, imploring him to let go of his loyalty to someone who was no longer there and instead, to protect Jinwoo, who stood before him now. In that moment, the knight's body was enveloped in a powerful black aura, signaling his acceptance of Jinwoo's offer. With a successful extraction, Jinwoo finally had the Red Knight under his control. The aura of power emanating from the knight's black claws was a sight to behold. Jinwoo smiled, naming the knight Igris. A message from the system popped up, announcing that the shadow had been upgraded to level 7. The other shadow soldiers gathered and respectfully bowed to Jinwoo, recognizing him as their new master. Jinwoo was elated by his newfound power and strength. He offered words of encouragement to his shadow troops, and then headed back home. Despite being exhausted from the mission, Ji-woo knew he had to meet with his teacher. But before that, he made a pit stop at a salon to freshen up and at the bank to open a new account, thus improving his financial situation. With renewed energy and a clearer mind, Ji-woo was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. With his newfound confidence, Ji-woo made his way to the school. The female students couldn't help but admire his new haircut and alluring presence. He then met with Jina's teacher, who was eager to discuss Jina's future plans of studying health after graduation. The teacher, being aware of Jinwoo's profession as a hunter, sought his help. It turns out, one of the teacher's students, who is also a friend of Jina, was a hunter and needed assistance. The teacher was worried that Han Song-ai had become too preoccupied with hunting to the point that she no longer wanted to attend school. With her hunter rank of E, Jin-woo knew that she was still new to the industry. He agreed to talk to her and tried to persuade her to focus on her education until graduation. As he thought about the situation, he realized that he had a schoolboy on his hunting team as well, and he laughed to himself, realizing how small the hunting community was in Korea. Jin-woo met with Han Song-ai. He informed her that her teacher had asked for his help to persuade her to finish school. However, Song-ai was determined to continue hunting and didn't see the point in returning to school. Jin-woo then tried to advise her, pointing out that as an E-rank hunter, she wouldn't be of much use in a raid. But Song-ai was resolute in her decision to continue with the hunt. When she asked why Jin-woo was there, he revealed that he was Jina's brother and had come to offer his advice. Jin-woo tried to convince Song-ai to reconsider her decision of quitting school and becoming a full-time hunter. He told her that as an E-rank hunter, she would not be equipped to handle the challenges of the hunting world and would be unable to afford the necessary weapons and equipment to survive. Song-ai was not receptive to Jinwoo's advice and became defensive, telling him to stop talking. Despite her resistance, Jin-woo persisted and offered to train her himself and turn her into a competent hunter. On the other hand, upon arriving in Korea, Dong-suk was greeted by Jin-chul at the airport. Dong-suk, with an air of arrogance, asked why the vice-chairman of the oversight department had come to greet him. Jin-chul explained that it was his duty to keep an eye on Dong-suk, especially since he was a highly ranked hunter. Dong-suk haughtily interrogated Jin-chul, who was still working under the elderly chairman Go Gun-hee. He declared that if he were in Jin-chul's shoes, he would sever Gun-hee's left hand. Dong-suk went on to mention that he wouldn't be staying in Korea for long, as he planned to go back to America as soon as his business was done. Jin-chul inquired if this had anything to do with hunters named Sun Jin-woo and Eugene Ho. The mention of their names brought back memories for Jin-chul, reminding him of the old tragedy where Dong-suk and his brother used to raid together frequently. The monitoring team suspects that Dong-suk and his accomplice have murdered many hunters in the past, but they have managed to evade justice as there is no concrete evidence, and no one is holding them accountable. Both individuals are obsessed with acquiring wealth, especially Dong-suk, who decides to join a prestigious hunting guild called Scavenger in America. This is all driven by their greed for money. Jin-chul, who held deep disdain for the duo, mentally referred to them as annoying trash. Returning to the story, Jin-woo extended an invitation to Song-ai to meet with the supervisor of the White Tiger Guild, Chief Investigator An Sang-min. Jin-woo had requested to participate in a raid with his team members, and Chief An readily agreed. Despite his stated goal of training his team, he saw this as an opportunity to showcase the strength of the White Tiger Guild and hoped that Jin-woo would be impressed and consider joining the guild. This time, the team would be embarking on a C-ranked gate mission, led by a rank A tank-type hunter named Kim Chul. A total of 14 hunters were part of the raid. Song-ai, filled with excitement, urged everyone to venture inside. Jin-woo told himself that he would get a sense of the other hunters' abilities during this mission. Kim Chul, fueled by determination, declared that they were not there for a leisurely outing, but for serious business, before leading the way into the dungeon. Once inside, Jin-woo realized that something was amiss with the gate. Suddenly it turned red and a powerful energy radiated from within, causing those outside to be taken aback. They soon discovered that the gate had transformed into a red gate, a highly dangerous situation. Chief An immediately reached out to the leader of the White Tiger Guild, Baek Yun-ho, for assistance. Baek Yun-ho, a highly skilled hunter ranked S, was in his office when he received the call. He promptly informed Chief An that he would go to the site to assess the situation. Meanwhile, Dong-suk was in the car with Jin-chul. Jin-chul asked where he was headed. Dong-suk replied that he intended to go to a dungeon and had heard that Jin-woo was already inside. Dong-suk warned Jin-chul not to get in his way, and Jin-chul reluctantly agreed, aware of the dangerous consequences of crossing Dong-suk. Baek Yun-ho arrived on the scene, shocked by the rare and unprecedented event. Baek Yun-ho declared that the Red Gate was impenetrable, closed by an immense force. They were left with no choice but to wait. He inquired about who was inside, and Chi Fan informed him that there were 12 hunters, including Chairman Kim Chul, Jin Woo, and Song Ai. Yun-ho revealed that he had been eyeing Jin Woo as a potential member for their guild, suspecting that he possessed hidden, formidable powers. Dong Suk and Jin Chul soon arrived at the scene, causing a stir among the others. Dong Suk greeted Yun-ho with a casual long-time no-see, which irritated Yun-ho, causing him to tense up like an animal. Dong Suk was frustrated that the Red Gate was preventing him from meeting Ji Woo, and taunted that it was a shame that he wouldn't get to see the bodies of those trapped inside. Yun-ho was filled with curiosity and thoughts about Jin Woo and his reputation among the important people. However, his primary concern was for the safety of the hunters trapped inside the Red Gate dungeon. He wondered what kind of environment they were facing, perhaps a scorching desert, a forest teeming with toxic creatures, or a frigid snow-covered landscape with harsh conditions. The hunters who entered the dungeon found themselves in a state of shock as they were suddenly transported to a forest covered in snow and freezing temperatures. The gate they had entered through was nowhere to be seen. In the face of a surprise attack, Jin Woo sprang into action and managed to defend against it, though one hunter was injured. It was then that Jin Woo noticed the absence of any nearby monsters. Looking up, the other hunters saw two figures perched on the branches of a tree. They were archers from the Ice Elves. Jin Woo realized that these elves were cunning and intelligent, as they only targeted the weakest hunters. Their sharp eyes allowed them to identify their vulnerable prey. Kim Chul, the leader of the group of hunters, declared that they were in dire straits, having been stranded in a dangerous and harsh forest due to the Red Gate they had passed through. He explained that their only options were to survive until the gate opened on its own or defeat the leader of this place, but warned that they might have to wait for months and that he could not guarantee their safety. Given the difficulty in controlling a large group, Kim Chul proposed that they form smaller teams and split up to increase their chances of survival. The hunters were taken aback by Kim Chul's announcement, and quickly scrambled to join his team, believing that it would offer them the greatest protection. However, Kim Chul was not willing to take on any weak hunters, as he saw them as a burden. A female hunter, named Eun Jae, chose to join Jin Woo's team, expressing her belief that Jin Woo was not just an E-rank hunter. With this, the group divided into two teams, with Kim Chul's team opting to follow a designated path while Jin Woo's team ventured into the forest. As Kim Chul and his team continued their journey, he privately thought that the other team would not stand a chance in this dangerous land filled with monsters. Despite this, he silently wished Jin Woo and his team good luck. It wasn't long until they were met with an ice bear. Excited for the challenge, Kim Chul confidently told the bear to come and attack. The bear obliged, but was no match for Kim Chul's formidable shield, which easily deflected its claws. With just one swift blow of his axe, Kim Chul defeated the bear, effortlessly taking down several others on his own. His fellow hunters were in awe of his skills, feeling grateful to be part of his team, knowing they would be safe with such a powerful hunter by their side. As Jin Woo's team ventured into the forest, Eun Jae voiced her concerns about the dangers that lurked in the territory of the ice bears. She advised Jin Woo to turn back and questioned his reasoning for entering the forest. Jin Woo calmly explained that although the forest was the territory of the ice bears, they were easier to handle compared to the cunning ice elves. With this reassurance, Jin Woo distributed warm clothing to his team members. The other hunters were taken aback by Jin Woo's preparedness and began to realize the depth of his experience as a hunter. Meanwhile, as Jin Woo's team ventured deeper into the forest, they were interrupted by the sudden appearance of an ice bear. The woman warned them of the danger, suggesting they turn back before it was too late. But Jin Woo, confident in his abilities, declared that he would take on the bear alone. With a quick leap, he engaged the monster in combat, and with a single punch, sent the massive beast crashing to the ground. The other hunters watched in awe as Jin Woo easily dispatched the monster, level up and bearing meat now on the menu for their feast. Eun Jae and the rest of the team were left stunned by Jin Woo's impressive display of strength and magic. As Jin Woo's team continued on their journey, they couldn't help but feel grateful to be part of his team. Some of the ice bears could even be defeated with just bare hands. However, the moment was interrupted as Jin Woo announced that he needed to go practice and complete his daily mission. After finishing his training, Jin Woo was ready to hunt. He came across a den of ice bears, and without hesitation, he declared that they must leave. His shadow expanded and soldiers emerged, ready for their first mission. The ice bears charged forward, but Jin Woo stood firm, ready to take them on. As Jin Woo's team continued their hunt, they were amazed by the power of Jin Woo's shadow soldiers. With just a few slashes, the shadow soldiers were able to defeat the ice bears with ease. Even if the shadow soldiers were defeated, they would quickly regenerate as long as Jinwoo had enough mana to summon them. Jinwoo was in awe of their incredible regenerative abilities, which were almost like immortality. However, during the fight, they encountered the largest ice bear, the leader. Jinwoo's shadow soldiers were quickly defeated by the bear, but Jinwoo remained unfazed. He confidently commanded Igris to take over the fight. As Igris stepped forward to face the largest of the ice bears, Jinwoo watched in awe as Igris expertly dodged the bear's attacks with his fast and agile movements. The power and precision of Igris's sword was frightening to behold as he effortlessly sliced through the bear's limbs and finally claimed its head as his prize. Jinwoo approached the fallen bears, and with a word of command, summoned a black aura from their bodies, extracting their shadows to become new additions to his army of shadow soldiers. The power and regenerative abilities of Jinwoo's soldiers left him amazed and appreciative of their near immortality. Meanwhile, Kim Chul found himself in dire straits. His trusty axe was shattered and his once mighty shield was now in ruins. He and his team were surrounded by the fearsome ice goblin monsters, and they were screaming for help. Kim Chul was unable to fend them off, and he was soon faced with the arrival of a new enemy, the Ice Elves, led by their commanding officer. The battle was intense, and in the end, all of Kim Chul's companions perished. With no other options left, he was forced to flee as the elves closed in. The Hunter Association had been waiting outside for 3 hours, indicating that the hunters had been in the dungeon for 3 full days. Meanwhile, outside the dungeon, the Hunters Association members were growing increasingly concerned for the safety of their colleagues. Yunho warned that in the worst-case scenario, they may not survive. Their priority was to ensure they had enough food supplies and adapt to the challenging environment they were in. Their only hope was that Kim Chul would be able to defeat the boss within the dungeon. Dong Suk grew restless and asked why Jinwoo, who was not a member of their guild, was on this raid. Chief An simply stated that he had requested to join, and that he had agreed, avoiding to reveal any further information. Yun-ho could tell that Chief An was concealing something about Jinwoo. Dong Suk suddenly lunged at Chief An, accusing him of hiding something. Yun-ho quickly intervened, grabbing Dong Suk's hand and demanding that he release Chief An. The situation escalated quickly, with the two powerful rank S hunters facing off against each other. Dong Suk's anger was palpable, and the air around them was charged with the intense power of their auras. Yun-ho was ready, his claws at the ready. The tension in the air was palpable as the two hunters prepared for a potential showdown. With a firm stance, Jin Chul stepped between the two hunters who were ready to clash. The tension was palpable and an aura of raw power radiated from the pair. Just as they were about to attack, Jin Chul interjected, stopping the fight before it could escalate. Although he managed to break up the scuffle, his hands were left throbbing in pain after withstanding the power of both hunters. He then revealed that he had initially suspected Jinwoo of cheating by receiving a double resurrection, but after conducting a strength test, he found that Jinwoo's power levels were still relatively low. Dong Suk replied haughtily, revealing that he was aware of the situation, but he had suspicions that Jinwoo and Jinho had set a trap that led to the death of his older brother. Despite this, he refused to give up his quest to find them and was not in the right state of mind to stay any longer. Meanwhile, deep within the dungeon, Kim Chul had succeeded in evading the relentless attacks of the elves. He trudged on, his food supplies dwindling, determined to continue walking for the remainder of the day. As he journeyed forward, a sight of tragedy met his eyes. A cluster of lifeless bears lay before him, and he muttered under his breath that this was the trail left behind by the rival hunting team. The renowned hunter, Hyaki, was certain that he could surpass their success. He needed to locate them swiftly. Suddenly, he stumbled upon them, deep in conversation and well-equipped with food and supplies. Kim Chul seethed with anger. How could these mere hunters still be alive while he had struggled to survive, lacking the essential provisions? He approached them with a menacing gait and snarled that he almost perished from starvation and insufficient gear. Who is responsible for hoarding these resources? He demanded a confession, threatening to cut them down if they failed to comply. Eun-jae retaliated with a fierce response, questioning Kim Chul's morality for allowing weaker hunters to endure and now arriving to impose his anger without fully understanding the situation. Kim Chul could not tolerate his ego being challenged and drew his sword. However, before he could act, Jinwoo stepped in and delivered a swift blow, sending Kim Chul flying. Jinwoo scolded him, reminding him that he was the one who had let the other hunters perish, and now he was becoming a hindrance. Suddenly, Jinwoo sensed a powerful energy. He spoke out to the source, acknowledging the immense strength, and urged it not to remain hidden. A massive group of elves, led by their commander, approached them. This is the end of part 4. This is the 4th part of the manhwa. As Jinwoo stood there, he suddenly felt an immense surge of power. His attention was drawn to a horde of elites marching towards him, led by their imposing leader. Jinwoo knew he was in a tricky spot. He had to figure out how to handle the situation with the elves. His apprehension turned to outrage as the Ice Elves King referred to someone among them as trash. Jinwoo demanded to know who the king was calling trash. To his surprise, the Ice Elves King was taken aback that Jinwoo could understand their language. In that moment, Jinwoo too realized he had somehow acquired the ability to comprehend the elves' speech. Amazed by Jinwoo's linguistic abilities, the Ice Elves King offered to introduce the band of ice elves who had attacked him earlier. But before he could finish his sentence, Jinwoo swiftly and deftly sliced off the head of one of the ice elves with a single stroke. Jinwoo said that the Ice Elves King talks too much. Despite the brazen display of violence, the Ice Elves King merely smiled in response. Jinwoo launched a surprise attack with his dagger, but the Ice Elves King deftly caught him. As the king peered at Jinwoo, his expression shifted to one of intrigue. He questioned why Jinwoo, who was not human, was fighting alongside humans. According to the king, the monsters within their realm were plagued by an incessant voice compelling them to eliminate humans. However, when the king laid eyes on Jinwoo, the voice seemed to dissipate. Puzzled, Jinwoo mused to himself whether this voice was akin to a system command. He was also perplexed as to why the king believed him to be non-human. The Ice Elves King reiterated that there was no need for them to engage in combat, as he had no desire for any unnecessary casualties. He proposed that Jinwoo abandon the humans and join forces with the Ice Elves, promising to spare his life in exchange. This suggestion enraged Jinwoo, who couldn't believe what he was hearing. Jinwoo sought to know more about the Ice Elves King's identity, origins, and motivations for attacking humans. As the king was about to answer, his thoughts became muddled, as if he were forbidden from revealing certain information. Jinwoo had an epiphany and dwelled on it. Despite this, the Ice Elves King made one final proposal, but Jinwoo turned it down. In response, the king warned that if Jinwoo continued to align himself with humans, he would come to regret it. The king also revealed the vast size of his army, hinting at the immense challenge Jinwoo would face should he choose to take on the Ice Elves. Jinwoo responded nonchalantly to the Ice Elves King, citing numbers to support his stance. He then demanded that the king leave. The shadow soldiers emerged from Jinwoo's shadow, startling the other hunters who were present. One of the hunters quivered in fear, asking who Jinwoo truly was. The two opposing armies clashed in a ferocious battle, with the shadow soldiers leading the charge. Though the shadow soldiers were eventually obliterated, they quickly regenerated. Despite the intense fight, Jinwoo's army managed to vanquish most of the elves. The battle seemed to be at a stalemate. Jinwoo assessed the situation from a distance, and acknowledged the strength of the Ice Elves King, admitting that he hesitated to take him on even with the help of Igris, one of his strongest warriors. Jinwoo then spotted a sword and hurled it toward the unconscious Kim Chul. With Kim Chul revived, Jinwoo and the Ice Elves King faced off against each other. The king, who introduced himself as Baruka, inquired about Jinwoo's identity. The intense battle between Jinwoo and Baruka began as Jinwoo leaped into action with his dagger. His first slash was skillfully dodged by Baruka, and though Jinwoo attempted a fast attack, it was easily blocked. Jinwoo then resorted to using another dagger to strike, but Baruka managed to fend it off. Baruka retaliated with a fierce attack, kicking Jinwoo and sending him flying through the air. However, with the help of his shadow soldiers, Jinwoo was able to extinguish the flames and launch a powerful assault on Baruka's body. Kim Chul, seething with anger, grabbed a sword that was lying nearby and prepared to kill Jinwoo. Unbeknownst to Kim Chul, Baruka emerged unscathed from the flames and charged towards Jinwoo, attacking him from the front. In a sudden turn of events, Kim Chul also attacked Jinwoo from behind. However, Jinwoo revealed that he had been anticipating this moment. Igris emerged swiftly from Jinwoo's shadow and plunged his sword into Kim Chul's body. With his dying breath, Kim Chul cursed Jinwoo, who remained stoic. Meanwhile, Baruka stopped attacking and smiled, remarking that Jinwoo was a human who had piqued his interest. A new round of fighting began between Igris and Baruka, and as they clashed, Jinwoo approached Kim Chul's corpse and whispered her eyes. Suddenly, a roaring sound echoed through the air, accompanied by a large black aura emanating from Kim Chul's body. A massive shadow emerged, wielding a large shield and axe. Jinwoo was stunned by the sight of Kim Chul's shadow, now known as Iron. A brilliant red light shone from within Iron's body as Jinwoo used the skill Taunting Cry. As Baruka was affected by Iron's taunting cry, Igris charged towards him, but was knocked down in one swift attack. Baruka came at them again, but Iron managed to block the attack with his shield and retaliated with a counter-attack. Although Baruka dodged it, Igris was revived once again and prepared to attack from behind Iron. Jinwoo also got ready to attack from the other side. Igris threw his sword at Baruka. Jinwoo delivered a decisive blow to Baruka, inflicting him with paralysis and a bleeding wound. Baruka's dagger's powerful effect was nullified. Jinwoo stopped to acknowledge Baruka's strength, but pointed out that he was now outnumbered and his troops were gone. As Baruka grew angrier, he attacked Jinwoo with even more ferocity. Jinwoo, in response, flung his dagger far away, which Baruka scoffed at, calling it a weak move. But Jinwoo had a trick up his sleeve. He activated the Dominator's touch skill, causing the thrown dagger to veer towards Baruka's body and land a hit on his hand. Iron quickly came to hold him back, while magicians from afar launched fire attacks at him. However, Baruka proved too powerful and managed to escape Iron's grasp, while emerging unscathed from the magician's flames. Baruka's anger continued to build, and he suddenly transformed into a new form. Jinwoo activated his skills and became invisible. He quickly dashed towards Baruka, slashing his stomach with his dagger. However, Baruka was still standing and managed to grab Jinwoo's hand. But in a split second, Iron's shadow resurrected and appeared behind Baruka with his axe ready to strike. Baruka couldn't dodge in time and was overthrown by Iron's last attack. A message from the system appeared, declaring Baruka's defeat. Jinwoo's level increased after the intense battle, leaving other hunters stunned and amazed by the spectacle. Baruka was finally defeated, but even after his death, Iron, the shadow soldier that was once Kim Chul, continued to attack him relentlessly. Jinwoo had to intervene and command Iron to stop the onslaught. Although Iron was now a shadow soldier, his behavior and fighting style remained the same as Kim Chul, leaving Jinwoo to ponder the consequences of the resurrection process. As the dungeon gate opened, Jinwoo felt a wave of relief and joy washing over him. The other hunters were stunned at the success of their mission, hardly able to believe that they made it out of the treacherous Red Gate alive. Jinwoo approached the lifeless body of Baruka, while the others waited outside for hours until the early hours of the morning. It had been an arduous and grueling week for the hunters, but they had made it through the dungeon, triumphantly overcoming the challenges it had thrown their way. The scene outside the Red Gate suddenly changed as three figures emerged, followed by Jinwoo and Songnai. Yunho, who was with the group, wondered why no one else came out. He was about to mention Kim Chul when he suddenly realized something shocking: the only survivors were the weak hunters. As Jinwoo walked away with Songnai, Yunho was left with a lot of questions on his mind. He wondered what had happened inside the dungeon and if Jinwoo had really defeated the boss. Yunho called up to Jinwoo, asking for a moment of his time to talk, but Jinwoo seemed to ignore him and continued walking away. Frustrated, Yunho firmly grabbed Jinwoo's shoulder, but Jinwoo quickly released himself and said he was tired. He told Yunho to ask his fellow hunters if he had any questions. Yunho's frustration and anger towards Jinwoo grew as he questioned how he managed to defeat the dungeon boss. When Jinwoo and Songnai were about to leave, Yunho stopped them and demanded answers. Jinwoo tried to avoid the confrontation, but Yunho insisted that as a guild leader, he had the right to know. Jinwoo reminded Yunho that he had saved 3 of his members, and Yunho should be grateful for that. Eventually, Yunho calmed down and apologized for his outburst. Jinwoo and Songnai left, putting an end to the heated discussion. The scene then shows Jinwoo sat in the car, deep in thought, pondering on why he was unable to extract Baruka's abilities. Perhaps the strength gap was too great, but at least he managed to obtain the dagger, which had a body-lightning magic effect that made him stronger and more agile. He dropped off Songnai at her home, and she thanked him before getting out of the car. Jinwoo drove away, only to recall that he had a raid scheduled with Jinho later that afternoon. In the afternoon, Jinho arrived to pick up Jinwoo for a raid. As usual, Jinho flaunted his expensive equipment. They then proceeded to pick up Songnai, who had a new look and appeared to have a crush on Jinwoo. On the way, they chatted about their experiences during the last night's raid. Jinho misunderstood and thought Jinwoo and Songnai had gone on a date. They then entered a dungeon for the raid. Jinwoo and Jinho entered the dungeon alone, and Jinwoo was amazed to see his shadow soldiers fighting alongside him. It was the first time he had seen them in action. Impressed by their strength, Jinwoo told Jinho that they no longer need to worry about mining crystals since they could handle everything now. However, Jinho felt useless and responded with a dejected tone. Jinwoo just smiled in response. In America, a group of hunters was in the middle of a raid in an A-ranked dungeon. James, one of the A-ranked hunters leading the group, was in a state of panic as all his team members had fallen. They were now face to face with a mysterious creature that resembled a human with long hair and large muscles. James assumed it was a human-type monster, but they couldn't be certain. The figure's terrifying strength was almost on par with that of the dungeon itself, and James believed he had no chance of survival if attacked. However, the figure spoke to him, calming him down and revealing that he was also human and hadn't killed James's team members, only knocked them unconscious. The figure explained that he was Korean and had been trapped in the dungeon for a long time, and just wanted to go home. James realized he had mistaken the figure for a monster due to the language barrier. The hunter escorted the figure out of the dungeon in fear, and they ended up in a hunter department in Washington, D.C. The figure was then handcuffed and locked in an investigation room where the higher-ups of the department were gathered. They were discussing the situation, and one of them mentioned that they couldn't understand the language the figure was speaking. The high-ranking officials at the American Hunter Department were gathered in a meeting room, discussing the unusual captive they had just taken in. The captive was a Korean hunter named Sung Il-won, who claimed to have been trapped in a dungeon for 10 years and was now mysteriously transported to America. The officials were skeptical of his story, as they believed he may be a monster with human memory due to his extraordinary strength. They expressed concerns that this could put the city in danger. The investigative team is set to delve deeper into the matter, and they have called upon the aid of a seasoned hunter and scavenger, Hwang Dong-suk. Being Korean, he will be able to provide valuable insight and facilitate seamless communication. It is believed that he may have completed his endeavors in Korea and will soon be on his way back to America. The team is eager to uncover the truth and determine once and for all if the suspected figure is a monster or a human being. The scene then shows Jin-woo and Jinho sit in a bustling restaurant, reveling in the euphoria of completing 20 successful raids. Amidst the clinking of glasses and murmurs of the crowd, Jin-woo turns to Jinho, curious about his aspirations for the future. Jinho confides in him, sharing that he now has the resources to establish a guild, and plans to discuss his project with his father. The air buzzes with the excitement of new possibilities, and Jin-woo can't help but feel proud of his friend's ambition. The approval from Jinho's father would ultimately decide his future, and Jin-woo knew this. He couldn't afford to waste any more time as all the necessary arrangements had been made. With determination in his heart, Jin-woo knew that it was time to get down to business. Clasping a key tightly in his hand, he knew that it held the power to unlock the gates of the Devil's Palace, a task he was determined to complete. There was no turning back now, and he set out on his perilous journey with a steely resolve, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Jin-woo turned to Jinho with a heavy heart, revealing that he would need to disappear for a while as he had an important place to be. Jinho, understanding the weight of the situation, expressed that he didn't want to be a burden to Jin-woo any longer. Despite having an older brother, Jinho admitted that he had never been close to him, and that he found true happiness in Jinwoo's company. With a sense of camaraderie between them, Jinho had come to view Jin-woo as more than just a friend. He was like a brother to him. Jin-woo was taken aback by Jinho's heartfelt declaration, and a warm smile spread across his face. He reciprocated the sentiment, stating that he too would consider Jinho as a brother. The very next day, Jinho went to see his father, eager to share the news of his accomplishments. He showed his father the license he had acquired to form a guild and shared a recap of his journey. As he waited for his father's response, Jinho couldn't help but feel hopeful that he would be chosen for the project over his brother. The stakes were high, and the tension in the air was palpable. Jinho's father interrupted their discussion with some unexpected news. A hunter who had miraculously survived the Red Gate event had arrived as a guest. He owed his survival to none other than Jin-woo, whose reputation for greatness had already preceded him. Jinho's father was stunned to discover that Jin-woo had been a part of his son's raid team all along, and a sense of awe swept through the room. It was a small world indeed, and fate had brought them all together in this unexpected manner. Jinho's heart sank as he realized the predicament he was in. His father now knew that Jinho had only managed to succeed in his mission thanks to Jinwoo's help. However, much to his surprise, Jinho's father was grateful for Jinwoo's assistance and acknowledged that he had played a pivotal role in Jinho's success. In recognition of Jinwoo's contributions, Jinho's father granted him the guild license and asked Jinho to admit that he had been assisted by Jin-woo. Swallowing his pride, Jinho admitted wholeheartedly that he could not have done it without Jinwoo's help, and was grateful for his unwavering support. The tension in the room dissipated as Jinho's father expressed his approval, and they all breathed a sigh of relief. Jinho couldn't help but feel a twinge of disappointment despite his success, and he beseeched his father to grant him the power to manage the guild on his own in the future. His father contemplated the request for a while, weighing the risks and rewards. Finally, he relented, recognizing Jinho's determination and grit. He decided to give Jinho full rights to the project, realizing that it was too risky to have outsiders managing it. Although Jinho's father was slightly disappointed, he was confident that his son had what it takes to make it a success, and wished him well on his journey. Jinho's heart swelled with pride as he thanked his father, eager to take on the challenge ahead. Jinho's father had one more request. He asked Jinho to invite Jinwoo to join their guild. Not just Jinwoo, but 2 other highly skilled S-rank hunters as well. His father believed that with these formidable hunters on board, their guild would become one of the most powerful and influential in the game. Jinho was determined to fulfill his father's wish, and promised to do his best to persuade Jinwoo and the others to join their cause. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was up for the challenge. Meanwhile, Jinwoo had gathered enough supplies for his mission to enter the Devil's Palace. He bid farewell to his sister, Jin-ah, and told her not to worry or come looking for him, as he was going to be gone for about a week. Without further hesitation, Jinwoo headed straight to the city center, where he took out the key that would open the gate to the palace. His mind was focused on the task ahead and he was ready to face whatever challenges lay before him in the dark and foreboding palace. Jinwoo braced himself and stepped into the Devil's Gate, which loomed menacingly before him. As he opened the gate with the key he held, a system message appeared, informing him that his mission this time was a survival mission. Passing through the gate, he found himself in a grand passage with imposing demon statues flanking his path. The mission was to hunt demons and collect their souls, a daunting task, as he had to gather 10,000 demon souls in total. Jinwoo was excited about the prizes for completing the survival mission. He could get free items from the store, bonus status points, and even a secret prize. However, he knew the mission would not be easy. He walked through the passage and found himself in a fiery city filled with crumbling buildings. The mission was to hunt demons and collect their souls, with a total of 10,000 required. Demon statues loomed over him as he began his task, determined to succeed and claim the rewards. Jinwoo confidently strode through the passage and entered a fiery city filled with collapsed buildings. A group of demons approached him, ready to attack. Jinwoo didn't hesitate and swiftly defeated them with ease. The demons in this area seemed to be low level, making it easier for Jinwoo to collect their souls. He continued to fight without stopping, and the number of souls he obtained kept increasing. Jinwoo realized that he was leveling up much faster than usual, as the demons here weren't as difficult as those in previous dungeons. With each victory, he was getting closer to completing the mission and winning the attractive prizes that came with it. Jinwoo was thrilled with the thought of leveling up quickly in this dungeon. The demons he encountered were no match for his skills and he defeated them with ease, collecting their souls as he went along. He noted that the demons in this dungeon were not as difficult as in other dungeons he had been in, and that it was a good opportunity to keep raising his level. As he continued to fight, Jinwoo received an item that caught his attention, an entry permit that allowed him to enter the next floor. This was no ordinary dungeon, it had 100 floors, each with a different world to explore. He realized that this mission was not going to be a walk in the park, but he was excited to take on the challenge and see what other surprises awaited him in this dungeon. He knew that the higher the floor, the more difficult the demons he would face. And on each floor, a powerful demon held the entry permit. Without the item, players couldn't progress to the next level. With the permit in hand, Jinwoo stepped into the bright light that appeared in front of him, signaling his arrival at the second floor. He wondered what challenges awaited him in this new world. Would the demons be stronger and more ruthless than the ones he faced before? Despite the uncertainty, Jinwoo felt a sense of excitement and determination. He was ready to take on whatever obstacles lay ahead and prove his strength as a hunter. Jinwoo encountered a monstrous creature, its shadow resembling that of an ice bear. Without hesitation, Jinwoo mounted the beast and set out for the next floor. However, his progress was quickly impeded by a trio of troublesome demons. With a show of incredible physical prowess, Jinwoo engaged in battle with the demons, ultimately emerging victorious. Impressed with their strength, Jinwoo pushed on to the second floor where he faced a variety of new and challenging monsters. Despite the difficulties, he continued to hone his skills and grow stronger with every battle. Dominator's touch had leveled up, allowing Jinwoo to successfully clear all the monsters on the second floor. Despite his progress, Jinho expressed doubt that he could clear 100 floors in a week due to the increasing difficulty of each level. Nevertheless, Jinwoo persevered and continued to defeat demons with ease, collecting more and more souls along the way. He soon found himself on the 51st floor, facing off against the powerful demon boss and its formidable army. Though the boss was large and imposing, Jinwoo was undaunted and led his army of shadows into battle. Jinwoo surveyed the formidable demon boss before him and knew he had to act quickly. He ordered his shadow warriors to attack, with the shadow mage casting fire spells from afar. The low-level demons were no match for Jinwoo's army and were quickly vanquished. However, the mid-class devil proved more challenging, as they were immune to fire. Jinwoo called upon his trusted knights, Igris and Iron, to finish the job. As the demon boss launched an attack, Iron raised his shield in defense while Igris skillfully sliced the demon in half with his sword. Jinwoo activated his steel skill and approached the fallen boss, his body rendered invisible. Confident that the demon was incapacitated, Jinwoo was taken aback when the boss suddenly vanished into thin air. Jinwoo was taken aback by the demon boss's sudden and erratic movements. The boss quickly closed in on Jinwoo's shadow soldiers, effortlessly crushing them with its strength and speed. Even Iron, known for his resilience, fell to the demon's might, leaving Igris helpless. Without hesitation, Jinwoo rushed towards the demon and landed a powerful punch on its body. To his surprise, the demon was sent flying from the impact, and Jinwoo realized that his strength had significantly increased. Although he had landed a powerful blow on the demon boss, Jinwoo knew it was not defeated yet and considered himself lucky for the impact. The demon was a formidable foe with a sprawling body, and it suddenly activated a skill called Wrath that increased its strength by 50. As the demon rose to its feet, its strength and speed surged. Jinwoo felt a sense of panic and called on Iron to throw his shield to defend against the incoming attack. Iron quickly hurled his shield, and Jinwoo deftly caught it just in time. Igris arrived on the scene to help Jinwoo, and together they managed to withstand the demon's fierce attack using Iron's shield. The impact of the blow caused a massive explosion, and the ground beneath Jinwoo's feet shattered. In a precarious situation, Jinwoo realized he needed to find an opening. As the demon raised its weapon for another strike, Jinwoo seized the opportunity and leaped into the air, narrowly evading the demon's attack. In response, the demon quickly redirected its attack, aiming to strike Jinwoo's body. With the demon closing in, Jinwoo's mind raced as he searched for a solution. He quickly activated the Dominator's touch skill on the demon, causing it to push Jinwoo's body out of harm's way. Though he managed to evade the attack, Jinwoo couldn't help but feel a sense of fear at the thought of what might have happened. The demon's face was slightly damaged, and Jinwoo saw this as an opportunity to strike at its head. However, the demon's movements were incredibly swift, and Jinwoo realized he needed to trap it to ensure a successful attack. Looking around for a way to gain the upper hand, Jinwoo spotted a building on the verge of collapse. Jinwoo's quick thinking allowed him to come up with a plan to defeat the demon. He ran towards a nearby building, and the devil followed him closely. Using his skill spin, Jinwoo quickly climbed the structure. From above, he taunted the monster, saying that it couldn't escape its fate. Jinwoo then destroyed the already crumbling building and, riding the debris, charged at the demon. His dagger struck the devil, injuring it. Furious, the devil tried to attack Jinwoo, but he dodged the attack and continued to land a series of blows on the demon. With the demon boss defeated, Jinwoo was rewarded with valuable loot. The demon monarch's earring was the first item he received. It was a coveted accessory that could enhance his strength and agility, and it was part of the 3-piece demon monarch set. Next, he found the world's tree fragment. This rare wood contained high levels of magical energy and was highly sought after. Finally, he picked up the Orb of Avarice, a small but powerful magic ball. Jinwoo was thrilled to have acquired such valuable treasures from his hard-fought battle. The Orb of Avarice has powers only accessible to those with a gift for wizardry. Legend had it that the ball had the ability to amplify one's magic powers, making even the most formidable foes a walk in the park. The latest addition to Jinwoo's collection was a pair of horns, a testament to his growing prowess. Thanks to Jinwoo's shadow soldiers, the demonic troops that once plagued the floor were eradicated. Amongst them was Igris, a skilled warrior who took great pride in presenting the heads of his defeated enemies. Iron, however, was not to be outdone. With a hint of arrogance, he hoisted the corpse of the boss high for all to see, proving that he too was a force to be reckoned with. Jinwoo handed the magical ball to his trusted magician's shadow and instructed him to test its abilities by unleashing a fiery attack on a nearby building. As the shadow followed his orders, a massive fireball formed, culminating in a spectacular explosion that obliterated the building to rubble. Jinwoo was taken aback by the ball's immense power, recognizing that in the wrong hands, it could cause untold destruction. With a tinge of fear in his voice, he marveled at the ball's potential to drive even the most skilled magic users insane with its overwhelming strength. This is the end of this part. The